Hello guys, so this video has been a long time coming. Apologies, I was super busy after Vegas, so just getting around to filming now. But this is a recap of my prep that I did from May to November time. A little bit on what went well for me. A lot went well. It was a very successful prep. But some learning curves as well off the back of the prep, and then some advice for you guys if some of you who've been following would like to compete in the future, some of the considerations before going ahead and doing that, and then also my plans for next time around. So we'll start with our start point back in May. So I just come off the back of an off season, started with Vaughan in sort of January in the new year, and a lot of that obviously was through that lockdown, the second, third, lost track, whatever lockdown we were in. I'd done a lot at home, and we moved our body weight from around 92 to around 96 kilos, which is the heaviest I'd ever been. I was obviously holding a bit of fat, as you can see from the photos. But in a fairly good place for this off season. Definitely had built a lot more muscle, focusing mainly on my top line, which was lacking from last time. My back was fairly strong. We didn't need to put too much sort of volume in for the back for it to respond. So we kept that at sort of one session a week. But the main focus was top line, delts as well, and arms. So we prioritized those sort of muscle groups within my training, and that was prioritized throughout the prep as well. So anyway, we started around 96 kilos, calories fairly high, around the sort of 5,000 mark. And we started in that deficit, which was a good place to begin with, because it meant that I didn't have to drop the calories, or I could keep the calories relatively high and still be able to lose weight. So that's exactly what we did. We just kind of made some small manipulations to begin with. Cardio wasn't very high either. Cardio was around 20 minutes 3 times a week, on sort of like a spin bike to begin with, and then moved that over to a Stairmaster, just to allow the heart rate to come up a little bit more and create a little bit more of a deficit through cardio, which to begin with was really easy. It was really easy to follow the deficit, and I would urge anyone who's starting or considering starting a prep for a show or whatever, make sure your calorie set point is high to begin with. Make sure expenditure is fairly low, so you've got plenty of tools throughout the prep to use to get that sort of stage lean. So we went into our first show relatively easy. We came nice and steadily down, not really any hiccups at all, and not really too many energy dips. Obviously, there was noticeable signs going in a few weeks prior to that show, as you'd expect from a prep, but I'd already done one, so I kind of knew what to expect in terms of that, but nothing too difficult, I would say. So first show, I was actually really happy with the look. I thought I brought a lot more muscle than 2019 show, although I think I wasn't quite as lean. The 2019 show was quite a rapid prep, so I was very aggressive. I think we only did that for about 12 weeks at the time, and the conditioning was really good for that show. So I think I wasn't quite as lean, but I definitely looked a bigger package, and I was actually really happy at the time with that package I brought to the stage, but I knew there was still a bit more to give. And later on, I kind of, realized, in natural bodybuilding, there's a new definition of lean, from just looking at some of the competitors this year. Josh being one of the guys who just brought unbelievable conditioning to a men's physique stage, which, I feel for men's physique originally was a look which wasn't super lean, but I think even sort of like in natural bodybuilding now, it's veering towards sort of a bigger and leaner look. That's kind of the future for sort of natural men's physique guys. But anyway, so did that first show. We ended up winning my class, which was the tall class, and sorry, not the tall class, the medium class, and then going into the overall. Unfortunately, I didn't win the overall. The guy who won, apologies, I've forgotten his name, but he brought a really nice shape to that to the stage. Good definition, really, probably conditioning wise maybe a little sharper than me, but fully deserved to win that, and it set my confidence for going to the next few shows. I was really on a good high after that show. Knew that we needed to bring maybe a little bit more conditioning for the next shows for the finals, overall really happy with the package I brought, and some small tweaks to the posing as well. So we then went into a little bit of a digging phase into the next show, which was the UKDFBA Finals. Now this show I didn't really necessarily lose too much more weight. We maybe were lower for a bit longer. We were at that sort of low set point, which was before the Heart of England, my first show. I was maybe at that sort of low for a longer period of time, but that didn't necessarily lose that much more weight. But what I noticed this time was I was able to get a bit fuller in the show. I think I had just been that bit leaner for a longer period of time. My body was depleted a little bit more, and therefore had this super compensating effect with carbs being put in. And we went for a very similar approach to our carb loading for that show. So it was a backload 3 days prior to the show, loading on 2 high days, and then a moderate day to kind of tidy up, and then on the day of the show kind of judging. Now this worked well, pretty well for the UKDFBA show. It was quite late at night, so we were losing a bit of fullness, but in the Heart of England, but this show was like super late. It was like I was on at about 9:30, and one of the things I noticed was we managed to maintain fullness up until about 5 p.m, 6 p.m, but then towards the end, like towards showtime, I just felt like I was struggling to get pump, albeit the photos look like I'm pretty full, and like I looked really good from these photos. I was actually really happy with the stage shots from the show. I just didn't feel like that when I walked on stage. I kind of lost maybe a little bit of confidence as a result of that. Posing, again, I could have made some slight changes. For some reason I was really nervous for the show, even more nervous than my first show, but I was actually, like, looking back at the photos, really happy with the look, and we finished a really respectable third in that show, and it seemed to be quite a mixed bag from judges' feedback as well. One of the judges put me to win on that show, but again, learning from that. Also, bodybuilding is a very subjective sport. At the end of the day, I'm not judging, it's a panel of judges, so you know I have to take that feedback on board and improve as a result, and just bring my best package. So going into the sort of finals, I wasn't like fully happy. Sorry, going into the next show, which was the WNBF show, I wasn't fully happy with the conditioning for the UKDFBA finals. So I said to Vaughn, I think we can bring more conditioning, and that's exactly what we did for the WNBF show. This was the hardest part of prep, for sure. It was a 2-week stint up to the WNBF Supernaturals, and I felt like ass most days, to be honest with you. It was a slog, it was a grind like I never experienced before, not even in that first show I did, apart from maybe the peak week, in 2019, which was really aggressive. This was really tough. Not only that, but quite mentally challenging as well. because I'd been in the deficit for that long. Obviously starting to really feel the effects of the deficit now, and you know, it was challenging. It was really challenging. I think slightly disheartened, like, you know, as anyone who's doing these shows, you kind of, you do go in to win, you want to win, and maybe a little bit disheartened, but not discouraged. Like, I was definitely ready to push on, and I'm really confident with the look I was bringing to the next show. So yeah, maybe a little bit of that played, but I think mentally, when you're that in a deficit, these things play more on your mind than you would be out of the deficit when you can think a bit clearer. So anyway, we really pushed hard, and coming up to that peak week, that was the most satisfied, the happiest I've been with my physique the whole prep. I remember going into the gym on that peak week being actually quite emotional with the way I looked, because by far the best I'd ever looked in my life, and just really happy and really proud of myself for the work I'd put in up until that point. And yeah, so it was quite emotional time for myself. I was just kind of gathering my thoughts, and you know, it'd been a long prep, and thinking of how far I'd come, all these thoughts come into your head. But yeah, we went on to that the WNBF stage, and it was the best I'd ever looked in any of the shows that I'd done. Really happy with the look I brought there, really sharp. And then I actually won my class, so I won the tall class, and then was invited to the overall. The focus on that day was just, I was really calm at the WNBF show, or not calm in relative to the other shows. I was really focused on kind of just getting to the overall and giving it my all. And then the overall came, and that was between myself, David, and Josh, and it was probably the closest overall. Well, I don't know in the whole show, but it was a super close overall, I think. Josh clinched the win. It felt like an epic battle. David looked absolutely class. Josh looked class. So obviously going in, I was nervous, but I knew I could I'd bring my all, and I did that. We didn't quite clinch the win there. Josh took the win, he took the pro card, but overall really satisfied with the look I brought. Again, posing probably let me down a little bit, but there's just little things I needed to work on with that, and I think one of the mistakes I made in general was posing too much in front of a mirror this prep, and I advise anyone who's doing a prep not to do that too often. Pose in front of the mirror to begin with, get your tweaks, and then practice your pose. So practice filming your posing on your phone, and then going back, recapping, making changes, and this is something I'll definitely be doing in my next prep. So anyway, we had the feedback, we knew what needed to be done for the World Finals, which I got an invite for, and just couldn't believe it that I'd actually made it to the WNBF World Finals, which I'd set out to do at the beginning of the year, and you know, I had to actually take a step back and look at what I'd accomplished again. So yeah, super happy, super stoked, super grateful to have that opportunity to go and compete at a World Finals in Vegas. So on the lead up to the Worlds, we basically held the shape that I brought to the WNBF show, because I was happy, we were happy. If we were to dig any further, there was a slight risk I was going to lose just a little bit of muscle at that stage, and I'd really brought as best of a package as I possibly could in that show. So it was a case of just maintaining that look going into the Worlds. We actually reduce inflammation a little bit by taking out a bit of the cardio, upping food slightly in some cases, just to maintain, and I was looking better and better as we were getting closer to that world stage. Now we obviously we flew over, and kind of as I was in Vegas, I would say pretty calm. Like I kind of went into the Worlds, didn't know who was going to compete, had no idea, so I was relatively calm up to the lead up. Wasn't really I was kind of in awe with Vegas as well, so that kind of took my mind off things. But then the closer it got, the more nervous I got, because I knew it started to hit home that this was a big deal. And this was my biggest show yet, the World Finals. So as I was kind of running up to into the lead up to the show, I was actually getting quite nervous. On the show day itself, I couldn't really stay and watch a lot of the show. I wanted to be away from that environment. So it was, I took myself to my room just to chill out. And one of the mistakes I made, to be honest with you, I was following the live stream. The class running was a little weird, where they would kind of run a class and then they would take the prizes or the awards from the previous class. So perhaps I was a little confused there, but I actually got out my room and thought I'd left in plenty of time, like over an hour, but got down and realised my class was pumping up, but when I had got down, which kind of flustered me a bit. I had to quickly get my glaze on, and then had about 10-15 minutes to pump up, which really threw me off. Normally I'm sort of in the pump up room a good half an hour before 40 minutes, just to compose myself, to kind of run through a few rounds of posing, and to think a little bit more. But this threw me off, and it's a huge, very steep learning curve that I will not make ever again in any shows that I do. So yeah, huge learning curve there. Went onto the stage, and I just wasn't quite happy with the look I brought to that show. To be honest with you, I felt like I was a little bit watery, and I don't know if that was from stress. And then, of course, because I was late to pump up, I just didn't feel I posed my best. The posing I brought was not exactly what the judges wanted either. I didn't display enough of a taper in the front shot, which, to be honest with you, that sort of something I should have addressed ages ago. Like some of the shows, I think if you look back to the shot in the first show I did, the Heart of England, I was kind of a bit more tapered, leaning into the hip, but I was very square on again. And again, this can relate back to the posing too much in mirror. Need to next time to pose a lot without mirror in front, so I can feel the poses a lot better. As well as I think my posing, I'm going to maintain obviously through my off-season practice every week, so that I'm going to really nail it for next time around. So yeah, ended up finishing 4th, which was incredible anyway. Just like, although, you know, it wasn't exactly what I did originally set out to do, super happy, and like super happy at the end of the day, you know, like originally a bit gutted, but to finish 4th at the Amateur Worlds is incredible. And like what's kind of spurred me on is even just kind of looking at those top 4 positions, very, very close. Not a lot. I went and got judges feedback after that show as well, and asked kind of what I need to prove. Again, posing was one that they said to me, and I did ask, is there a lot in between the first sort of 4 or 5? They're like, not much at all. The judge I spoke to, she was like, literally go away and improve that front shot, basically, show more of a taper, and I can be up in that top running. But yeah, overall a really really successful season for myself, and it is confirmed that I love the sport, and I will continue to pursue the sport. This isn't me done yet. There's still a lot more to come. My plans for the future are to go again in the WNBF and the UK DFBA to compete again, and bring an even better package for next time. The few sort of learning curves for this one is definitely posing as one. Even like the level of leanness, because there's a lot of guys who are in even sharper condition than me, and also obviously the mistake I'd made at WNBFs, which will not happen again going into any further shows. We can still make some improvements to the top line delts and arms, but having said that, these are small things that need to be changed on the large grand scheme of things, and we are very close to doing well and getting that pro card, which I set out to do in the future. So that's a wrap up. Like at the end of the day as well, although I'm kind of going over those things I need to improve, these are very objective for me, and it's not like I'm disheartened or feel down at all about this. It's exciting for me because I know I've got room to improve, and kind of these are improvements I need to make going into the next show, next season. So that's a wrap up of my prep, and I would just like to finish with some advice for first time competitors or someone just looking to do a prep for a photo shoot or a show for the first time. The number one thing is make sure you really love your training, and you're doing this for all the right reasons. I wouldn't do a prep if you have any previous eating disorders, or you're currently battling through an eating disorder, or if you have any sort of body image issues currently. If your mental state's not quite there, I wouldn't recommend it. Make sure you're doing it all for the right reasons, that you love the sport, you enjoy your training, and the prep itself is just part of the process of displaying the hard work you do during an off season, essentially. So that is my main advice before anyone kind of goes into it. And in my opinion, bodybuilding is a hugely rewarding sport. It's the natural scene that I've been a part of this year. There's so many great people I met along the way, so many inspiring people, and I think bodybuilding can get really bad bad rep, but at the end of the day, if you really love this, there are obviously the negatives associated with being extremely lean, and the side effects, but that comes with any sort of sport at a high level. Even sort of doing a marathon, for instance, this is always the example I refer back to. Think of the recovery after a marathon, and it's exactly the same with prep. You have to go through a recovery phase after that. So it's about checking off this, making sure you're checking off a checklist to begin with, making sure that your mental state's a good place, you really enjoy your training, and it's something you really want to do, because there's also a lot of sacrifices which come alongside it. It's a long stint. It can affect relationships, but if you make sure your relationship's solid going into that prep, and I'm lucky to have a very supportive girlfriend who supports my goals and what I do. So make sure you tick off the checklist before you begin, and then also make sure you're ready and you're in the right position to start a prep. You've done a good long off season, you've got enough muscle to show on stage, and it's going to be a package you're truly happy with. That's my main advice from my personal experience. So I'm going to leave it there for today, but guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message. I know this is a super long video, and props to anyone who's managed to make it all the way to the end, but also if you just skim through, that's totally cool. Send me a message if you've got questions, and I'll catch up with you guys soon.